Iconic Sonics, I'm Mike Gastineau. Our thanks to Swinomish Casino and Lodge and Dick's Drive-In Restaurants, two places that our guest today may have been to. Certainly, I'm positive he's been to Dick's because he's a Seattle guy, and he might have wandered into the Swinomish Casino at some point in his career. Kenny Mayne, good to see you, and thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we keep the Sonic name out there.
That's the goal of this. And you've been a storyteller your whole life, and in a very unique and interesting way. You had a style unlike any I've seen. How important do you think that is? I'm of the opinion this is, we want to keep the colors and the letters and the markings and the stories all out there for the day when they return. That's a big deal, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of funny because Oklahoma City took everything with it, right? Like technically the Thunder won the 1979 NBA title. Do I have that correct? Right?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So I want that stuff back. I want Oklahoma, stay where you are. I want it to be a new team because people always ask that about, when are the Sonics coming back? And then but let's take Sacramento and make them be the Sonics. Like, no, thank you. Like nothing against Sacramento. And also I think I'd feel dirty doing to another city what happened to us. And I know it happens. It's, it's a big business. All the professional sports are big businesses. Teams have moved through the decades. The Brooklyn Dodgers, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of teams that move for various reasons at various times. We lost the Seattle Pilots when I was a little kid. But I want it to start fresh. I hope they can consider expansion soon. We got the new gym. There's no reason. It's a city that will definitely support basketball. Look at all the good basketball that's happened even without a pro team, right? Like what Jamal has helped sustain there with his pro-am and all the young kids that have made it to the league. Like it's a good basketball city and there's no reason it shouldn't have an NBA team.
And I'll throw in the Seattle Storm has been awesome to watch. And I know you had Sue Bird on your last show with ESPN. She's, I say she's on the Mount Rushmore of Seattle athletes. And I mean, even all time. Sure. I mean, what she's done is remarkable.
I just texted her a little heart symbol the other day for her saying she's coming back to the Storm. And I'm so happy for her. And I'm so glad she's doing it. And she still looks young. I saw her play both in the Olympics, but I saw her in person up there in Everett back in, was it June or July? I can't remember which game I went to, but man, she looks young and quick and she hasn't lost a step. So I'm glad she's back to do it in our new place, Climate Pledge, and hope they have success in her probably final year is my guess.
I wrote a piece about her 2 seasons ago when they won the championship. And I said, look, what's cool about her right now is this isn't some ceremonial victory lap. She's still dominant out there and still, maybe she's not quite doing everything she was doing in her mid-20s, but she's doing a lot of it and she's using the wisdom she's accrued. You're right. This isn't something where she's hanging around just to sell tickets or something. She's out there working.
Yeah, and I think I need to amend. As soon as I said it, like, why am I predicting until last year? I don't know if it is or isn't. So I take that back.
Yeah, you can. What do you know?
She can play till she's done playing. And I'm so upset still, similarly, somebody who still plays young. I just don't get why Jamal, even a 10-day something, I keep thinking, did I sleep through a couple days? Because I don't follow the sports daily like I did when I was daily going in for the Sports Center. Is like, nope, he still hasn't signed. Isaiah signed 2 different places, right? So
yeah,
I just don't get it because there's no way it's anything to do with who he is as a person. He's one of the best quote unquote character guys you're ever going to find. He's been teammate of the year. He's been 6th man of the year a couple times. He'd be so good for the young kids. He can still get some points. I don't know. I would love somebody who knows more than I about how the league works to explain why it didn't happen.
It's hard to explain he's not still one of the however many best players we have to fill all the NBA rosters, that at some point he should be in that mix. And the kind of contract you could sign him to now by NBA standards would be pretty darned affordable. And if he can't get it done, you can get out of it right away.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to remain hopeful. We're getting close to a deadline though pretty soon, are we not?
Yeah, for the 10-day deals, yeah, for this year, and eventually, I guess the league tells you, if you're not going, you're not going. But I'm with you.
Again, if he doesn't sign this season, he'll have that much fresher legs for next season. So
that's right. That's right.
The funny thing is, I was no good. I was good enough to play college football, but I wasn't a star. I always try to stipulate that.
Right.
I had a good enough arm to be Division 1A. I guess that's the best thing you can say. I can still throw, not quite like I could at 22, say, or 20, but not that different, right? Like that part doesn't leave you. If you have a good jumper, or if you can throw a football, or you can do this or that, you definitely lose certain physical attributes. But I just know, I don't care if Jamal's 40, 41, 42, or 45. I still think he's going to have some kind of game that can, and as you were saying about Sue, with the knowledge they have, that's actually the defining thing, right? They're smarter players.
Right.
They can minimize, how much physical, it's like when you play tennis or pickleball or any sport, what am I trying to say, racquetball, against a good player versus a bad player. The bad player runs all over the hill. The good player doesn't move. Just like really good soccer teams, you see them in their stations, right? They know how to have spacing, and they don't run around in circles. They kind of stay in their space. So these veteran players are smarter and know how to pull it off.
I'll vouch for your arm, because having seen you at Mike McCready's Crohn's and Colitis Foundation flag football game, I was among the thousands that left that game, and we all went to sports bars and talked about Kenny Mayne's arm. Did you see Mayne zipping it all over the field? It's unbelievable watching this guy throw the ball.
I get to do that at the Super Bowl, God willing. Hopefully the COVID thing doesn't interfere, but we play a game at the Super Bowl, and usually a couple more times per year. It just hasn't been the same the last couple of years, obviously, with a bunch of veterans against ex-NFL players. So I might need to get out and throw once before we do that. It's too cold back there right now.
Kenny, I want to ask you about the early Sonics days, because we've probably over the years not talked about them as much. I got to Seattle in '91. I tend to focus on the '90s and the aughts. There's some great history with this franchise starting in '67. You were born and raised here. You'd have been about 7 or 8 years old when the Sonics arrived. What was 7 or 8 year old Kenny Mayne thinking about the arrival of the National Basketball Association to his little town?
It was a pretty big deal. I grew up on Star Lake, Kent Address, Federal Way School District. So, we still identify, well, we had Seattle or Tacoma to identify with, right? They're about equal apart. But it wasn't that big a deal to get to Seattle back in those, you were there in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right? It wasn't that big a drive. It didn't have the same traffic as we do now. And we went to a lot of those games. I still my first images were standing, if people can remember, the old Coliseum, the tunnel that the players went through to go down the corridor and around the corner to the locker room, and little kids would stand and put your hand out or try to get an autograph, and just looking straight up in the air to see Wilt Chamberlain or Nate Thurman or some of those old great centers. It was a thrill just to be involved. We kind of knew our team wasn't great, but we had some really cool players, and pretty quickly we had a guy named Lenny Wilkins playing for us, so that wasn't bad. I still remember when he was traded, how mad we were. He was traded for Butch Beard. And now I'm in, I think, gosh, I want to say 7th grade. I think I have the timing about right. And the Cleveland Cavaliers come back to Seattle to play the Sonics, but we're all going to go to the game and root for Lenny Wilkins because we're still pissed about the trade, right? I ended up getting sold out of the game. And this is back in the day where, one group of parents would drop you off, the other parents would pick you up. So you got dropped off at 5 o'clock to go to the food court or whatever, and you got picked up at 11 or midnight or whatever it was to go home. So there's no cell phones. I mean, I guess we could have used a pay phone, but we didn't. Right. We got sold out and didn't have enough money to buy from scalpers. So we just screwed around for 4 hours, listening somewhat on radio. We went to the Space Needle. I think I threw my T-shirt off the Space Needle. In my head, that was a big protest about the whole Lenny Wilkins. I thought it would resonate with everyone. Nobody knew what I was doing, but yeah, those are the days, man. There's so many big names and cool names. Lee Winfield, Tom Micheri, Bob Rule, Slick Watts would come along a little bit after that. I could just keep spitting out names of all my favorite guys, but Lenny was the one. Lenny was so classy and so good. And it was so cool that later he would come back as a coach, and he's the one who got us that championship.
We're about the same age. I hate to point it out. I'm a couple of months younger, and that's how it's always going to be. I grew up in Indianapolis. I remember my first Pacers game. I think the ticket was $2. What did it cost you guys to get in to see the Sonics play?
Yeah, I'm forgetting. I should have the memory, but I don't. It was in that neighborhood. But what I distinctly remember is buying whatever they were, say $3 tickets for the highest seat, which still wasn't bad. Right. There was really no bad seat in that whole gym. And we would spend most of the first quarter and much of the first half looking to see if the rich people didn't come that night. And at halftime, you'd go down to the seats that you'd marked, 4 rows up from section, whatever. And then you'd sit there and act like you belong, and you're like 8 rows up. So we got to see it from the top and the bottom back in those days.
I remember when I'd go to Pacers games, I was already a radio geek and I listened to the games all the time and I loved it. I loved broadcast. I loved listening to the broadcast. They sounded like they were having so much fun. There's a guy named Jerry Baker who did the games. He was a terrific play-by-play guy. And a friend of mine said, have you ever bought him a Coke? And I said, what are you talking about? He says, if you buy a Coke and you walk by, you could walk right by press row. I mean, there was no security.
Yeah.
And you can just reach over his shoulder and put it down in front of him and he'll be in the middle of the broadcast and he'll turn around and say, thank you. I said, you got to be kidding me. So whatever, you'll get 25 cents for a Coke. We go and get it. It was like the coolest moment of my 8-year life at that point was seeing Jerry Baker in the flesh saying, thank you for buying him a Coke.
Oh, that's pretty good. We had Bob Blackburn, doing our calls. And I remember they always played, I grew up with really good music in my family. We had the imprints were James Taylor, the Beatles, and Stevie Wonder. All right. That's pretty solid upbringing.
Yeah.
Musical, and we had Bob Blackburn on the radio who would play those who go way back. You got to be as old as me. His intro music was by someone named Taj Mahal.
Oh,
you got to go back and he played it every show. I don't know if he must have been a fan or the producer of the show. I don't know why, but I was like, wow, that's Taj Mahal. My sisters are listening to that guy, and who was just a great artist. We had 100 great moments listening to Bob Blackburn call the games, and especially when I was, my young years, I'd listen to the road games. They'd be like playing the Knicks. It's 4:30 in the afternoon in Seattle, right? 7:30 on the East Coast. And Bob Blackburn would make the call and we'd listen on the radio. Then I would imitate whatever he just called with a Nerf ball into my lamp in the corner of the room on this console stereo with the radio going. By then they're up the court going the other way. So you had time to recollect yourself. And yeah, we kind of lived it out. And then we added the Nerf hoop, that everybody put over a door and shut. I think we all kind of lived the same childhood, the same similar experience in those days.
I don't know how my parents didn't kill me. Why they put up with me jumping? And you should have seen me. I was the slam dunk champ 8 years running in my bedroom on the Nerf hoop. I mean, nobody could do what I could do.
Yeah. Well, or how about when you didn't have that, a sock and a lamp? And we broke some. It's funny. It's like my old next door neighbor, 2 doors down, Jeff Whidden. We'd play in the yard there all the time, play wiffle ball, whatever. I remember, his dad did this great job on the lawn and made it look so nice. And we'd kind of like rub out the base paths, right? Or second base was getting worn down. And his mom said I just remembered, she said, are we raising kids? Or are we raising grass? So I think most of the parents, as I always did, you lean toward the kids. You put up with the mess and let them play their indoor games.
Sure. What else are you going to do? Let them grow a little bit. Hey, so by 78 and 79, you're into your college years, so I don't know how much you're still paying attention. And obviously, in 77, 78, any city's sports history is filled with heartbreak as well as hopefully some success. And Seattle over the last 20 years has enjoyed more of the great success and has seen some incredible things, but also heartbreak. That Super Bowl loss will never go away. The 78 finals loss, Game 7 at the Coliseum. I mean, it's set up. The Sonics are going to win it, except that they don't. Were you around, or were you staying away at college at that time, or were you in Seattle for the finals in those 2 years?
I was in Wenatchee, Washington, because my first year out of high school, first I walked on at Washington, but then I walked off, went to junior college in Wenatchee, played a couple years over there. So I was finishing my freshman year, I guess, in Wenatchee in June of that year. And then the next year I was I'm sorry, I think I'm getting the dates wrong. 77, 78, I was in my second year. I apologize.
Got it.
So I was in my second year of JC, and I ended up going down to UNLV the next year. So when they won the title, I think I watched it from the Holiday Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada via TV. I went to some of the playoff games, though, the year before. In fact, I remember in one of the early playoff games buying tickets outside from a scalper. He had 3 seats, and there were 3 of us. 2 were the worst seats possible. The other one was like down on the floor, not literally on the floor, but, a couple rows back. So we did the scissors, paper, rock thing, who got to sit where. But yeah, those were the days, man. I'll just never forget the year we won it. There was a scene where Gus and DJ were waiting for the Bullets to come back on the court after Seattle made a run, kind of like solidified the lead in the game, and got on the court early and grabbed the basketball. And they were kind of like screwing around, shooting shots over their shoulder, showing how loose we were and how happy they were. And it just showed the difference between where the two teams were at that moment. But yeah, it was tough losing the other. That easily could have been a back-to-back thing. I got mixed up on the chronology, but yeah, it was 78 loss, 79 win.
And you talk about going to UNLV, and I'm curious. I actually did a little research on your college football career, and you were a backup quarterback. It looks like you saw a little bit of action. I'm curious, did you happen to get into the BYU game? Because of the 2 years you played there, 1 year, if I've got it right, you guys upset 8th-ranked BYU. Were you at that game? Were you traveling, or did you get in at all?
The year before, I broke my leg in the middle of the season against Oregon. So I came up home for a little bit and then went back. My senior year is when we beat them. Sam King, who's still a friend, he's down there in Las Vegas. He was the starter ahead of me, and he led the nation in passing yards. You can look it up. 1981, Sam King. He had the game of his life. I think he threw for close to 500 yards. Jimmy Sandusky, who until recently has been coaching up there, the Lummi tribe up northern Washington, playing 8-man football. Mm-hmm. He was the receiver who ran the post corner in the last minute of the game to beat BYU. The funny thing about that game, even the fact that we beat them, Steve Young was the starting quarterback. Jim McMahon was supposed to be, right? But he was hurt. And so all of a sudden we're like, oh, we got this freshman guy starting instead. And we knew he was related, to the founders of the school and the Mormon faith. And here comes Steve Young. So that was pretty cool, having McMahon and Young on the other side. And we beat him, I think, 45-41, something like that.
That's exactly right. It's funny how you remember those things. And I mean, what a big win over an 8th-ranked team at the time.
I charted plays, but I was part of it. You know what? I don't regret any of it. Obviously, I wish I would have played better and played more, but it was a great experience there. Made great friends. I'm still friends with many of them. Randall Cunningham was a freshman our senior year, so got to know him a little bit before he went on to his career.
Kenny, this leg injury that you referred to in the last segment was a pretty severe one. It impacted your life dramatically, but it led to a really amazing thing happening. So give us the runfreely.org story, if you can, in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I was second string quarterback, UNLV. We were playing at Oregon. Oregon was pretty good that year, I believe. Reggie Ogburn was their quarterback, I remember. I think they were like 7-4, 8-3 or something. We go up there and we're getting beat. We just didn't have it. And I'm in there for kind of in and out of the game. And I'm in there at the very end of the game to wrap things up. But, we're down, I think it was 33-9. It's funny how the scores stick with you. But I'm pretty sure that was right. And I was like, oh, what the hell? Last play, let's throw 95. That was our all go route. And everything went wrong. I'm getting rushed. I kind of slipped. It was rainy. The ball slipped out. Like, there wasn't a good thing about the play. And then to top all that off, somebody kind of stood me up on the left. Some other guy stuck his helmet on my ankle on the right. And I'm on the field. In the old days when they used film to look at games, the ending shot was always kind of a left to right pan, and then you end on the scoreboard. And that's right. The other film. And as you would look at that game, they did the same thing, but in the left corner, you got this guy kind of wobbling around on the ground. That was me. And nobody knows it's happened except for a very few amount. Most people are shaking hands or doing whatever they're doing after a game. Thankfully, a couple of our crew on the sideline, medical staff, saw what happened, sprinted out there and got to me quickly. And a couple of the players stayed around. But I had what was called a fracture dislocation. I played the next year in 81. And then every year and every decade since, it got worse and worse and worse, to the point that I think it was 2011, I'm in Seattle and I went to 3 doctors that week. One was going to fuse it. One was going to replace it. And the last one, they were going to cut it off. Like, I was really in that kind of desperate situation. Like, just getting up in the morning was depressed. Like, oh my God, I got to stand on my damn leg again. Like, I was in a really bad way. But to my good fortune, the amputation guys kind of saved my life in a way. They said, go find a better therapist. I got some notes on this guy in Kirkland named Nino Pribic. He kind of brought my leg back to life. Then I got a brace that worked for a while, but then I found a much more usable brace in Gig Harbor, Washington, called an ExoSim. And I put it on the first day, and I was literally running on the treadmill like 15 miles an hour. Day one, no pain. And Gretchen and I, my wife, decided let's do something good with that. And we started this foundation called Run Freely. I had a kickoff event in 2018. So it's been a little over 3 years now. And we've averaged almost one a month, awarding one of these devices to a veteran who needs that, for any reason, to get around, to work, to play with their kids, to get out of bed without pain. And it's been pretty successful. We had such good help. Jamal Crawford's been a great asset to us. Jerry Rice, Gary Payton, Lenny Wilkins, Steve Largent all showed up at our first event. Steve Kerr's helped out. Dale Earnhardt's helped out. Chris Long. I'm forgetting others, and I apologize. Van Pelt helped out. And then other people anonymously send in $10, $20, and before you know it, you got enough to go buy another device. So let me check my text. I sent it to my guy that's in charge. Ryan Blank says, just night at 4, video to come today. Oh, our latest recipient just got her device. He said video coming today. We'll put that on Twitter and show people our newest recipient.
Yeah, I love the story, Kenny. And what I love the most about it, I've always been a fan of this. I work with a couple of organizations similar in terms of scope and size. I love the grassroots nature of this, that you guys don't have an office or a building or anything. You're just out there, you're pounding away at it, letting people know. I think it's a really cool thing. And for you to share your good fortune with others it's really neat. Congratulations on the success of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I left it out when I've told the story so many times. I have a longer version and a shorter version. Never know what somebody wants, but I remember the day I got my device. This is November of 17, November of 17. And I cried I could not stop crying. Like I couldn't believe that I had this thing that was going to let me play flag football. I was going to get to go golfing. I could hike, and I can run sprints in my driveway. I can do all these things that I otherwise could not do because my ankle isn't great. Like, it's funny, people would think it's the opposite, but I mostly go around in flip-flops or slippers because if I put on a regular shoe, it just doesn't serve me well. It doesn't bless my ankle. If I wear my brace, that's different. I can do that. But sometimes you just don't feel like putting it on and just want to go to the grocery store. And
sure,
it's just easier to go, and so everybody's always like, why are you wearing flip-flops? It's 30 degrees, because then my ankle will feel better. That's why,
Yeah.
So there's always a story to tell. But this is a good one. And we just got a new veteran. Apparently she's going to be up and running today.
Runfreely.org. And we're proud to partner with them with Iconic Sonics. So if you want more information, runfreely.org. And for some reason it hits me that maybe you should get Ace Freely to be a spokesman for Run Freely. I don't know, just think about it. It's an idea.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been saying this for a while. I think there's going to come a time where it's going to have an application like in professional sports. There's going to be some running back whose ankle's trashed, but they need him to get those 40, 50-yard kind of game. Quickly outfit him with one of these things, and you can do it without the pain. So, and I'm not in it. I'm not doing that as a promotion to make money. We're not making money. We're giving away money. But I'm very happy to be associated with the guy, Ryan, who put this thing together. And I'm glad that he's helping both veterans and non-veterans, get out of pain and get back into their life.
It's a great story, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. You were a Long Acres guy. I'm assuming you've been to Emerald Downs. I know you've been a horse racing guy. You covered it in your career. You talked about going to UNLV. You watched the 79 finals in a casino. I know I'm assuming you're a guy who likes to make a bet occasionally based on all of that anecdotal information. Once, just occasionally, if there happens to be the opportunity. Again, you and I are about the same age. I'm amazed and I'm happy with the evolution of sports gambling in this country. For years it was something that everybody knew everyone was doing, but it was illegal. And little by little by little, those walls are getting chopped down. You're doing some work with Caesars right now as a spokesman. Could you have envisioned in 1980, 81, you're at UNLV, you're in the middle of one of the most fun cities ever, if you like to place a bet. Could you have envisioned a time where A, there'd be pro sports in Vegas, and B, pretty soon you're going to be able to make bets when you're sitting in the arena or sitting in the stadium? I mean, little by little, it's going to become so ubiquitous. It's going to be such a change.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. And Vegas there was always this fear about any touch of Las Vegas. Like, well, no, actually the people running the gambling, they want the game to be as fair as possible. They want it to be the cleanest game. So they kind of had that backwards. But I think the funnier way to look at it is kind of like through sportscasting. How, don't you remember, was it 5 years ago or maybe less? Tony Romo was going to go to Las Vegas for, he's probably getting paid to show up for a night, and they're going to do some fantasy football thing, and he was going to speak and sign autographs or whatever. And the league lost its mind, like, how dare you, blasphemy, showing up and talking about fantasy football, and I was like, wait a minute, now, not that much later, it's like you say, it's all over the place. You're going to be betting at your seat in the stadium pretty soon, right? So we used to get hounded on SportsCenter if you mentioned the actual over/under, or if you mentioned the line, like, the NFL would lose their mind. Now, obviously, NFL's partners with a whole bunch of companies, Caesars being one of them. So I think it's just catching up to where everybody was. Believe me, I think just like anything else, people should do it responsibly, whether it's drinking or marijuana usage or gambling or whatever the hell your thing is that you're doing. It's within reason. So I'm not saying everybody, like, let's encourage everybody to blow their mortgage, but people were already betting, right? Everybody's in a fantasy league. Everybody wants action on college or pro football games and had it one way or the other. Now it's just kind of legalizing it and taxing it and monetizing it. So I don't necessarily think it's some great sinful thing that we should be ashamed of, but it's funny how quickly the tables turned, like almost overnight.
It'll be interesting to see the long-term impact of it on Las Vegas. I don't think it'll be all that negligible. I think people are still going to want to go to Vegas because of all the obvious reasons people love to go to Vegas.
Oh, for sure. I mean, remember when, I can't remember how it was, 25, 30 years ago, when you started seeing more casinos around the country, a lot of them on Native American reservation land. That didn't dilute the appetite for still wanting to jump on a plane and do the Vegas thing. Like, in fact, probably some people would say, maybe it encouraged it, like, oh, this is fun here, and now I want to do it over there. So I think the market is wide enough that a whole bunch of players can be in that game. And Van Pelt show, to a large degree had something to do, right? They just out and out talked about bad beats. They straight up talked about the lineup. So that kind of freed everything in a way in the culture there. If you watched a game, Team A versus Team B, it's an interesting note to say, Team B was a 20-point underdog. You're not going to believe what happened. Right? That's an interesting way to look at a game that people thought the Team B never had a shot. Turns out they win, or they almost win, or whatever the case. So I don't know. It makes the storytelling, I think, even better than it was before if you can introduce that to it.
Anybody who's spent any time at all in the sports talk business has talked about bad beats because they're fun stories, whether you're on the right side or the wrong side of it. Everybody identifies. I don't know whose idea it was, if it was Stanford Steve or Scott Van Pelt's idea, but boy, whoever came up with that idea should get early lunch every day, because man, oh man, was that a good one. It's funny. You hear it's coming up and you stay for an extra segment if you were thinking of turning the show off. It's so well done.
Well, I think too, that's, similarly, just doing sports shows in the way that people sit on their couch and watch games or text their friends. Doesn't everybody watch games that way and laugh about the absurdity of what just happened, or, make fun of the bad call or whatever they do? I think that's always the best way to cover sports. Just be like a regular guy, How would you communicate whatever just happened to your friends or your wife or whoever you're with? Instead of being all official and treating it like, it's not that. They're a bunch of games. There'll be a bunch of games tonight, and there'll be a bunch of games tomorrow, and then there'll be a bunch the next day too.
Anecdotally, I would say that the coaches I dealt with over the years, a lot of them paid attention to the spread, not because I think they were gambling. I don't think they were, but it's also for them an indicator of where people think their team is. And I had coaches, they'd know, and they might not say it on the record, but they'd say, hey, we were a 7.5 point underdog. How would you think of that performance? They'd pay attention to it as a way of measuring their own success.
Or maybe a motivating factor,
Sure.
Look what people think of you guys. You don't even belong on this field, But that's the old thing with horse racing. The horses can't read, right? They can't see the board. You're talking about bad beat. I don't know why you reminded me of, you brought up horse racing originally. So when I would go, when I go anytime actually, but particularly the big days, the Breeders' Cups or Derby days, whatever, I'd almost always, in addition to whatever bet I was making, I'd throw away $10 more or whatever to bet children's birth dates, because you just never know. on a
Right,
big
right.
day, 14 horse field, any of those horses, they're all grade 1 horses, right? So we were at the Breeders' Cup in Arlington. It was a muddy day. Orientate was the favorite in the sprint. And I bet my daughter Annie's birth date, which was January 10th of 2001. So it was 1:10:11. It's the best way I could come up with it. They're turning for home and it's 1:10:11. And they're just staying that way all the way around the track. The one horse is like 55-1.
All right.
Thunderello, I think. 10 is Orientate, the 8-5 favorite. I forget who the 11 was. Unfortunately, last 50 feet, the 10 surpasses. So it becomes 10-1-11, not 1:10:11. And everybody's like, why didn't you box it? I'm like,
Yeah.
because she wasn't born in October. You know?
Right, right. Yeah,
So
I
it's
like
funny.
it.
You can
With-
throw
with-
darts at the wall sometimes and get lucky. Like I'm not against doing that for a small amount of money and pick your funny names or your favorite numbers.
You know, when someone asks me, why didn't you box it? I'm always like, why weren't you with me at the window 3 minutes ago? It would have been really helpful advice at that point. Right now, it's not doing me any damn good.
Since you opened the door, I'll tell you worse than that. Mostly table managers, you know, the crew, the pit boss, the whole crew, they're supposed to be on your side. They're supposed to be, let you have fun. Let's make this a fun experience. We're rooting for you. Because if you do, you'll probably tip them as well. And they know the casino's not going under. In that little 40-minute period, if this group of people happens to win, that's actually good for the casino because they'll probably all come back and give it away another day, right?
Right.
But occasionally you run into, who knows, maybe they're at the end of their shift, maybe they've been treated poorly by a customer and they're not giving you that good Nordstrom customer service at the table. And I love it when, you know, you've been betting whatever, you know, you've been betting 11, 12, you know, like exotic bets and not hitting. Then the time you don't, you're like, I'm throwing away 10 more bucks. I'm holding back this. Of course, it comes in on the time you don't bet it. And that's when they turn to you and say, you should have bet at that time.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Because you know the result and you just, it's really difficult.
I got cleaned out one night in Vegas. God, I was young. I didn't have a lot of money to blow. And I was up like $300 on a poker machine and just lost all. There's a guy standing behind me. I just lose it all. I keep getting frustrated and stubborn and stupid. And we get done and the guy says, you should have quit like at the halfway point. I'm like, yeah, thanks a lot for that. That was very good advice.
I think as long as we're telling old gambling stories, we should end with a fortuitous one. So I'm going back to Vegas. This is after I broke my leg and I'm working out. My parents had moved. They lived down in by near 5 Mile Lake, if anybody knows where that is. And I went to 5 Mile Lake Park and I'm working out. And I bump into these 3 old high school friends. They were a year older than me. As I'm doing sprints or something, they see me and we wave to each other. And it comes up like, hey, let's go down to the racetrack. There's like 2 races to go if we hustle, right? There's Long Acres we're speaking of.
Sure.
And this is back in the day. I don't know if people remember this, but the first and second race had a $2 daily double. The 10th race, I think it was, had a $5 minimum exacta. And those were the only 2 exotic bets. You couldn't bet rolling pick 3s. There was no pick 6. It was exacta only on the last race, right? So it was a big deal. So we rushed down there. It was 4 of us, 2 different cars, sprinting down to the track. And we get ready for the last race. And one of the guys, Chuck Mangori, bails out at the last second, doesn't want to join our little consensus pool with Nick Metcalf and George Laney were the other 2 figures. So now there's 3 of us. We still want to do it. And now it's like 1 minute, you know, horses are nearing the gate. Now I'm kind of panicked. Oh shit, what are we going to bet? You know, we're trying to like quickly like compute it. So I go down, I make the bet. We get separated from each other somehow. The race runs. These abject failure horses end up winning. There's a 20-1 winner and a 18-1 second. No business winning the race. I'm excited. I was looking at my number. We won. I don't know why we won, but I'm looking at the ticket. You know, we have the 5 and the 6 or whatever it was. The other guys think we lost. And I'm like raising my arms like, no, we won. It paid like $4,000. And what I had done is wrongfully covered up with my thumb our consensus. And I bet the original picks that Chuck, the guy who dropped out, his nominations came in. So the 3 of us end up splitting this money. We gave Chuck $100, filled his car with gas. We thought that was a fair thing because he did give us the info, but he dropped out as far as putting $30 in. But when you're 21 years old, you're heading back to college and you just hit a race for $4,000 three ways with a couple of the guys. That's like, winning the lottery.
You're a good man. You and your friends. I got friends that would not have slipped me 100 and would not have filled my car with gas. They would have mocked me for years about dropping out. Well, and again, that's all part of the fun of it. And I'm with you. I understand that there are pitfalls to this, and hopefully there'll be safeties and things put in place. But there's a lot of people that do it as an entertainment thing, and they have fun with it, and they laugh about it, and they tell stories. And that's why I think it's great that it's becoming something that's not as mysterious anymore and is going to be available.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, everybody is already doing it to their fantasy. Like, if ESPN hits the button, they could be the biggest gambling company in the world if they say, we're going to monetize the fantasy football front page, and who knows, they may very well. It's been fun though. We got the Mannings are all involved with us as well. I just shot some videos with them, allegedly coming out next week. Halle Berry and JB Smoove, that was pretty fun being in a commercial with them. So Muggsy Bogues, Clyde Drexler, Megatron, Calvin Johnson. I think I'm leaving out a few others, but they signed a whole bunch of people in different realms, right? Some football people and some actresses and actors, and just trying to kind of get noticed for the place, because a whole bunch of other companies are doing the same thing. So it's very competitive.
Kenny, I know you're a Seattle guy. You're out in Connecticut for our conversation, but you've always been a Seattle guy. And we talked about it a little bit briefly off the top of the show. Our belief out here is that the Sonics are coming back, and maybe not next season, but within the next couple of years. I don't know what information you have or tea leaf reading you're doing as you look at it. It feels to me like this is coming. There's no doubt the city will support it. There's never been a franchise set up to succeed as much as a potential Seattle Sonics franchise, particularly with guys like Jamal beating the drum for it, and Spencer Hawes beating, all the guys that are Seattle natives that want to see the team come back. What's your feeling on timing with this, and your feeling on the potential expansion partner? The rumor that everybody believes is it's going to be Seattle and Vegas coming in. Mexico City might be in, but it'd be huge in Vegas, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, Seattle's no brainer. The new building alone, any league that, is this place going to do it? Or any ownership group, can we monetize it? Can we sell the season ticket and the luxury suites? And, that was the whole hang up with the old place, right? Even the Oklahoma City guys, I think, had they gotten the upgrades they wanted, they would have stayed. I think had they been told that you're going to make this much revenue because you're going to have all these streams, these sources, right? But that didn't happen, and they took off. So the first sin was selling it to people who don't live in Seattle. That's where, right. But we don't have time for that right now. I think it's a no-brainer that it's going to happen. I have no idea when. I know that Silver, the commissioner, was it 2 years ago? I feel like it was 2 years ago, where he kind of on his own blurted out one day, like, I think it just came up somehow, and he brought up, Seattle's definitely, because previous to that, I remember he had put it off like, no, it's many years away. Then he kind of changed his tune. So I think the momentum is there, and I think obviously it's just ready to go. It's not like an experimental thing. Will it make it? Will it won't? Or will it not? So I hope they can get a good expansion. I think there's enough players. I don't think it would dilute the league. And also, why does it have to be an even number necessarily? Can somebody explain perfectly why that's true? I know they like the balance, but whatever. Vegas would hold up a team as well. I don't know, what other candidates they're considering, but I know Seattle's ready, and I want it to be an expansion team, and hopefully they have a liberal expansion draft. So we can start off like the Las Vegas Golden Knights and get after it on week 1.
Yeah, be good right away. That'd be a nice plus. Well, the amount of money they could make for expansion fees too. But your point is well taken. If there isn't another city ready, for years the NBA had 23 teams, they had 27, like they had 29 at one point. Yeah, it's no magic number you have to have, but the magic number might be the amount of billions of dollars an expansion team will cost that will go into the league and be divided among the owners, and that's going to intrigue them. Yeah,
and I don't care if he's 47 years old. I sure hope it happens sooner than that. They need to sign Jamal, whether he plays or not, ceremoniously. He needs to be on day one roster of that team.
Kenny, I wanted to say right at the end, I enjoy your Twitter feed. It's entertaining. You're willing to put stuff out there that's fun to read and also intriguing. And through Twitter, I have found out, you mentioned this earlier, you have you might have the deepest appreciation for Stevie Wonder of any person I've ever known. I mean, out of the blue, you'll get a tweet from you and it's like some old Stevie Wonder song that I either hadn't heard for a while or hadn't thought about. And you've got a deep love for that guy and his music.
That's a fact. It's funny. There's this guy, Eric Alper. Do you follow that feed?
Yeah.
He does they're really fun. And I love people like that on Twitter who, because there's so much yelling and negativity. It's fun. Just everybody join in on a fun little exercise for a half hour. And he's always putting out these just good questions. Like, can you remember the first album you bought with your own money? Questions like that. Right. And it makes you think back, like we were doing earlier, thinking about our childhood. But it's funny. It's almost like a running joke now when he asks, name the perfect album or it's something where you're supposed to praise some artist. I always go like, I don't even bother or name a song with such and such in the title. Yeah. I can just go through Stevie's catalog and give him all the answers. You don't need to go wide. So no, I grew up with, his music, Jackson 5 and Stevie Wonder, James Taylor, Beatles, that was kind of like our repetitive music that we played. And I still maintain, and I know old people stick with their music. It's just the way it is, right? Like my parents loved, Edie Gourmet and Sinatra and Lena Horne and, the stuff. I'm listing my mom's, favorites.
Right.
She thought they were the best ever, and maybe she was right, and maybe it was for her. I haven't found better albums than Talking Book and Intervisions and Songs in the Key of Life. Those are all from my childhood, from my junior high and my high school years. I remember when Songs in the Key of Life was coming out. This is back when you had to go to the record store to buy it, right? And there was DJ's Sound City down at South Center. And there was another one, the name is escaping me, that was closer by. And I would call them, because Stevie was notorious for the albums coming out August 1st. And next thing you know, it's like November 5th or whatever, right? There was always delays. And I would call every single day. I'd get home from school every single day. Did it come in? Is it coming in tomorrow? And when it finally did, I remember the moment too, because I was my senior year. We played Curtis High School. I probably had the best game of my high school career and bought the album either that day or the day before. Now we're at the after party at a guy named Dave Stanfield's house. So he's playing Boston and Foghat and Aerosmith and all these bands. Nothing against them, but that's the music that's being played. And because I had a good game, he let me play 3 songs off of Songs in the Key of Life. And I'm just guessing because I haven't even heard the album yet. I'm just pulling it out of the sleeve, So yeah, that's a definitive one. But Talking Book and Intervisions are probably what hooked me the most.
You couldn't go wrong guessing with that album either. It was, well, it's fun chatting with you, man. Like I said, we're about the same age, so we got a lot of the same experiences. And what you've done with Run Freely is what you've done with your career is outstanding. What you've done with Run Freely tops all that. You're really impacting people's lives. That's a cool thing. And when the Sonics come back, you got to be out here, man. You're gonna have to be here and
100%. I will say I got to go. I want to thank the University of Washington. Was great to us on Veterans Week this November. Got to go out and do a cool thing at Husky Stadium before the game. We had some veterans run on the field wearing the braces, the devices, and they got to let me tell the story. Then I went to the Kraken, 2 different games, and they helped hype the same message. I got on the radio, helped call the second period. I wasn't very good. Did a little ceremonial thing up in the stands. So yeah, the Kraken, that team, those are fun games. I know I am not a hockey expert. I like the sport, just watching it like as a novice, like nodding and like, oh, this is cool. And it's not that hard. Those guys are going that way and those guys are going that way, and you pass it around, you try to score. Like the basics are pretty simple, but there's so many subtle little nuances and whatnot that if you haven't followed it all your life, just like football, it's hard to explain certain things that someone who doesn't, hasn't grown up with it wouldn't quite get why that happened or why a team did such and such. But it's fun, man. I loved the new place, and the Kraken people were great. It was fun watching the team. Hopefully they build on that and, start having some good years.
I think that's, and that, that building, back to the key, that building is why the Sonics are coming back. So good for the Kraken and OVG for getting that thing.
And I like done. How it's there's still like a touch that like, oh, that's still the Coliseum. I still see
yeah.
It didn't wipe out what was, it just made better what was. It's first class all the way. So like a really cool joint.
I'm glad you've got probably a little better appreciation of this going back to the 60s. But I mean, I like that I got here in 91 and I got to go to what I kind of consider the original Coliseum and then Key Arena. And now this one, it's cool to have been in all 3 buildings, and they have maintained that.
Well, it's funny, when I was at Channel 11, way back when, KSTW, and then even the years after when I was like freelancing for ESPN, I used to go, they gave me like, a couple hard passes to go to the games anytime I wanted. And they had, if you remember, in the old Coliseum, there was a catwalk at the very top, opposite the Sonic side, I believe, opposite press row, so to speak. And you could walk out. You had to, I have a little fear of heights, so you had to kind of like squeeze up through this tight little walkway. And then you were up in this big platform that was, I think, used for concerts. It's probably where they used the big spotlights on the artist or whatever.
Right.
But during a basketball game, it was just empty. And I'd say, hey, can I just go sit up in that thing? I'd rather be up there than be crowded down here. And it was the most amazing view, like watching the Showtime Lakers from up there. And the fast break developing, and like it was a really cool place. Plus you had amazing room. Like I love stretching out, not feeling like you're tight and next to somebody and all that. I like people. I don't like crowds, I guess. That's what
that's it. He likes people. He doesn't like crowds. And I appreciate all the wisdom today and the humor and the fun, and best of luck to you. I hope our paths cross soon, man.
All right, be well, and wishing Slick Watts well.